What's up, YouTube? Here we have the once again the Line 700E DFC in its glory, finally completed. Um, I had originally went with Spectrum servos. I forget what part number or what number they are, but it's the ones that are like 180 each. Um, I'm actually gonna save those for my other heli build, and that's actually why I have a mess. Cause I have been building a few birds this past week, like back to back, and I recently ran into these torque servos, and I gotta say these torque servos and the part number here for this one is a BLS2208, and I think the other one's gonna be, it's just gonna be the same number, and it'll change to T for tail. I'm not too sure. Oh, and actually, it's actually you can see there. Let me see if I can get a better shot. It's gonna be BLS 0704T. They sell these in a full set. They give you 3 cyclic servos and 1 tail servo, and I spent 300 and change. I gotta say that's a pretty killer deal out here, because most servos around, all aluminum, and high voltage servos are normally around at least 160 150 range. At least that's what I spent with my Spectrum servos. This was supposed to be a budget build. I think I'm far from that at this point. I did get the kit for $500 off eBay. It was brand new. Some of the upgrades I've done to this was the main gear. I got the wider main gear and the taller pinion. I went with the 110 tooth main gear and the 13 tooth pinion. Now I had to make some modifications just because the motor that I'm using and the electronics that I'm using. My setup it's a very light setup. I am running the Spectrum 120 amp ESC. It's a 12S ESC. Max burst on the ESC, I believe, is 140 amps, if I'm not wrong. And the thing about this setup, and this is the reason why I go with the same electronics on all my birds. I kind of, maybe on my next bird I'll choose like maybe a Scorpion motor or something, X Nova or something like that, but I really don't have the skills to justify why I need that much power, especially when I have something that's has been reliable to me. And yeah, I mean, so pretty much I had to get the upgraded gearing kit. I had to gear down to get more head speed out of my setup. I am running a 500 kV E-Flight motor. Now, this is great because it's a very torquey setup, but I lose some motor efficiency. It's not spinning the blades fast enough on its own. So just gearing down the main and the pinion, that gave me an increased head speed of 200 and change RPM. It was limited to 1900, 1950, I believe, in the highest RPM, so outputting 100%. Now the good thing about this motor and this setup is this motor only draws 80 amps continuous and also at max burst. So it never really, there's a lot of headroom with this motor, with this ESC. It's at 120 at max 140, and this thing only ever pulls 80 amps. It's super efficient. It never gets hot. I've tried my hardest to overheat it, and that's the reason I went with this setup. But again, the drawback was that this motor, there really is no way to get the shaft to kind of fit the way the align motor would. So what I had to do to make this work was get the motor mount, flip it upside down, and the motor is able to fall a little lower, and it at least a quarter of an inch now, or yeah, like a quarter of an inch now goes into that support bearing. And what I had to do to the pinion is pretty much this pinion comes with a raised lip, and that's to ride on the bearing, the inner race, and obviously to load the ball bearings and not load the outer race, which doesn't spin. So what I did, I had to machine the top off and kind of just make a traditional gear with it's a flat top, and you can see it's probably like 3/1000 or it's like 4/1000 of an inch space in between the gear and the bearing support. And I just put a little very small shim in between. Not that there really be any like radial or load on that bearing. It's mostly for when you're under high torque and is deflecting the shaft outwards, and it's messing with your gear mesh, and that's when it starts ending up in premature gear wear. Now, I made it work. All I had to do was cut these notches out in my frame. They came out nice and even on both sides. That brought my head speed back up to, I believe it's 2200 RPM. At a stable hover under hard collective, it'll drop down to like 2150. But that's with the lowest governor setting. Highest governor setting, it'll maintain at 2000, 2200. Now, this thing's, as far as all that is, it's actually a good bird. I never really had an Align. This is probably my first Align. I'm very excited to build the Tron 7.0. And yeah, this thing just it made a whole world of difference. I gotta say, a 700 really comes alive at 2100 RPM, 22, even just 2000 is a good number. And 1900 was great, but it was kind of it had all the power that I needed, well, at least for me, but it didn't really have sometimes you're flying some helicopters and they're very nimble, and excuse my daughter, she's in the background, she's playing with her baby stroller. Anyway, so they're so nimble, and you kind of just you feel like you would need more power, and you crave more power is what I'm trying to say. And that's what it was for me. I mean, I kind of like to play with my RPMs here and there every once in a while. There's days that I feel like I can fly like a maniac, and I kind of want to just do that. I love speed passes. I do fly some 3D. Nothing crazy, just some moderate 3D with some scale flying and high speed, sport flying. I also see I'm running the Align, the stock blades. There's not much to say about this one anymore, but as far as that, only other thing I'm gonna be changing are those tail blades to the what do you call it? The rail. I believe it's 116 millimeter tail blades. I heard that that's like the fix for the tail hump, and I was able to hear it once I was at 2200 RPM. At 1900, the tail was making no noise. It was quiet. It's what you would expect out of a good heli. And 2200, I was able to relate to everyone else's experience. So yeah, the torq servos, awesome servos. For anyone looking for servos, I'd recommend getting these torq servos just because they're friendly. The pricing is very easy on your wallet, and they're probably the only servos I've ever purchased that actually come with aluminum servo horns, and you know, and that's cool, and that's something that I think should be standard in, especially when you're spending, almost 200 each servo with Spectrum. They should include, aluminum servo horns. But I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, it should be a standard. And yeah, once again, I'm also running the 6250 HX. It flies great. I mean, you just gotta learn how to understand how to tune this thing out. It you'd be surprised how it feels after, you get it all dialed in. But yeah, other things I want to mention are my setup on my remote. Just things that make it easier to fly, and not only just easier but safer, and especially something I like to use with the stability mode and my hold mode switch to prevent damages from when something does happen, crash or whatever it may be. But here, let me show you my remote settings so you guys can understand what I'm trying to explain. Okay, so here we have my settings, and I'll try to do this as best as I can. I'd have to invest in some camera equipment, but this will do me some justice anyways. So this is the Line 700 DFC. For my DR and Expo, I have that set to 0 all around. Just because I fly with my thumbs, and I need my thumbs aren't really the longest, and I kind of fly at center. That's gonna be to your preference anyways. Throttle curves. My throttle curves are 60, 80, 100. That's gonna be putting me at 60%. I'm at 1200 RPM. 80% is giving me 1600 RPM, and 100% is giving me 2200 RPM. Pitch curve. This is the one where I was referring to, where I have it in my hold mode set up for when I do come and I'm about to crash, and to prevent damages to the heli itself. So for my normal mode, I have a pitch of 40, 45, 50, 75, 100. I don't really have a substantial amount of negative pitch, just because in normal mode you can't fly inverted anyways. I just give it some negative pitch just so it can help with reducing my elevation a little quicker, rather floating down. So yeah, just in case, like, my battery's dying or something, I can just kind of reduce the speed. And if that's the case, I could just go to my stunt 2 and just, do like an auto and get to the ground as soon as possible. But yeah, so then my stunt 1, stunt 2 are, 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. It's a linear curve. And for my hold, I also have 40, 45, 50, 75, 100. Now, this is what I recommend for someone who's a beginner, because I have stability mode active on my hold switch, meaning when I hit hold, it's gonna auto level on its way down. Now let's say that for some reason you're gonna crash, right? Anytime you do crash and you hit your hold mode, the helicopter, no matter what orientation you were in, it's gonna level out, and you're always gonna crash with the heli upside up, or at least on its side, or landing on its landing gear. And the stability mode on what I found on the Spectrum 6250 is so accurate and so quick and responsive that it always saves all my helicopters from major damages. I only really ever have to replace either landing gear, feathering shaft, the main shaft for that sake gets saved, but I still replace it anyways, and there's times when I don't, and just because it's perfect. I hardly damage my tail shaft or anything. I never have hardly have any boom strikes. With the larger models, boom strikes are more what do you say, more frequent. It's something more that's going to happen just because it's a heavier blade, and it's gonna, it's not gonna hold its position in a straight extended, so it'll just come down on the boom. Anyways, that being said, so that's why I have it set up this way. So if you're someone who wants to do an auto landing, or you know when you hit hold, this is not gonna be good because it's gonna reduce how much negative pitch you can control to spool up that head on the way down. Now, you do have negative pitch, and it's enough to spool it up and at least maintain the head speed that it was on the way down. And towards the bottom, you can just, give it some positive and slow the fall down a bit. But that's why I have it this way. It works out for me, and yeah, it saves my all my equipment and my helis from substantial damages. So this is what I do. Um, one other thing. This hold switch has well, not the hold switch, but the so whenever you do, my greatest fear when I'm flying is losing my tail. Just because I've lost my tail on most of my helis at least twice. I have a Fusion 360 Smart, and with that one, my belt tail, my tail's belt was a little too loose. Well, actually, it was too tight from factory. I believed it was too tight. Now, when I went ahead and loosened it, I loosened it to get more efficiency out of the battery and the motor, to reduce the drag. What I should have done is to check it the right way to see how much drag there really was in the whole system. Is pretty much just remove the motor, back it off, do my belt tension, make sure the tension on the belt's not too tight, and then spin the blades, make sure there's not too much load on the whole um, heli, the whole setup. So I did that, but before all that, I flew it high RPM, and it came down because of the tail. The belt jumped the other side of the pulley, so I couldn't spool up the blades anymore, and yeah, so because of the hold switch and safe enabled and hold, which you can do in forward programming menu, you go to stability, hold, just turn it on. So whenever you flip that heli, it's always gonna land upright. And because of that, with my Fusion 360, I lost my tail. It was just spinning in circles at, the fastest it can spin. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen it and experienced it. It's out of control and it's scary. But with this activated, I just pretty much went back down from my stunt 2, is where I only do stunt flying, went down to stunt 1, where I have safe active, and helicopter leveled out. It was just flying in circles. It was stable. The pyro comp is awesome. It was just compensating for all that rotation. Granted that it's spinning so fast, and yeah, I kind of took it as if I was spinning it myself, and then I dropped down my RPM to stunt 1. To normal mode, and my RPM was substantially lower. And then at that point, I reduced my altitude, and I hit my hold switch, which I still have stability active, so the helicopter's not going to go on its side or anything like that. And as I hit hold, right before I'm about to land, when it's a good height, I will give it some positive collective, and that way it'll counteract the torque, and the helicopter will land on its skids flat, and you'll reduce all the damages that you'd expect, like blades, main shaft, feathering, your tail fin, your tail blades, your tail shaft, your hub. All that's gonna run you over $100 anyways. Servos will be damaged. No, so that's how I have it. So on hold, I have stability on, normal on, stunt 1 on, stunt 2 off. Envelope, for those of you who don't know, it's gonna allow you to tilt the heli more. It's measured in degrees. So 60 degrees is what's gonna allow you to, that's how many degrees it'll allow you to tilt the helicopter in stability mode. If you want it to feel more like, I don't know, like you're in stunt 2, or you're flying 3D, you can set this thing all the way up to 90 degrees, and the helicopter will allow you to tilt in 90 degrees. Once you release the stick, it'll snap back. Now the gain will be how fast the helicopter snaps back to center. Um, I like 50. That's actually the factory one. Sometimes I go 40, just because sometimes it snaps back too quick. Like if I'm doing a maneuver, or like a turn, or banking angle, or I'm going, doing a fast speed pass forward, and it'll just stop in midair because it wants to snap back. But anyways, that's what I do, and that saves my helis all the time. It saved my Fusion 550. Not my line. I haven't had issues with the tail. It saved my, like I said, Fusion 360. My smaller ones, my Fusion 180. That one was my fault. I didn't tighten the the blade hub was